Chapter 1. Democracy. Democracy is a form of government in which the ruling power is usually vested not in any particular class or classes, but the members of the community as a whole. Lord Bryce. O meaning. O types and features. O challenges to democratic process in India. O inequality. O illiteracy. O regionalism. O Naxalite problem. O gender inequality. In this chapter we shall try to know, what is democracy? What are the types of democracy? What are the features of democracy? We will discuss. What are the challenges to democratic process in India? L. Inequality. L. Illiteracy. L. Regionalism. L. Naxalite problem. L. Gender inequality. Indian Parliament. Meaning. Everybody talks of democracy today. In the words of John Donne, we are all Democrats now. Democracy seems to be a good word almost everywhere and is often used not so much to convey information as to persuade and arouse emotions. We use this word, democracy, almost every day of our lives. Most of us repeatedly affirm our faith in democratic principles and values and claim its superiority over all other systems of government. But just what do we mean by it? It means different things to different persons and groups, and it is not possible to present all the implications of democracy in a single sentence definition. If etymologically traced, democracy is of Greek origin. It is derived from two Greek words, demos, meaning the people, and kratia, meaning power. Democracy therefore means power of the people, or as Herodotus called it, rule by the multitude. Lord Bryce defines democracy as a form of government in which the ruling power is usually vested not in any particular class or classes, but the members of the community as a whole. Seeley defines it as a government in which everybody has a share. Abraham Lincoln gave a very simple, easy and popular definition of democracy. The words of Abraham Lincoln in his address in Gettysburg in 1864 throw light on the nature of democracy. He termed it as a government of the people, by the people and for the people. The terms by, for, and of in his definition are central to understand democracy. Democracy is not only government by the people, but those who rule are of the people and govern for the people, which means for the interests of the people. So, the source of power in a democracy is people, and this power should serve the people. Then, democracy, in its political sense, refers to a representative and responsible form of government. The ultimate sovereignty is vested in the people. Freedom of speech, opinion, and association are the characteristic rights in a democracy, and without these, democracy does not exist. But democracy is not confined to the political sphere. It goes beyond the frontiers of politics. As a form of social organization, it rests on the principle of social equality. There can be no democracy in a social system in which special privileges are enjoyed by a few, or which is based upon distinctions between high caste persons and untouchables, or in which women are given a place inferior to that of men. In a broad sense, democracy means the existence of democratic way of life in areas such as family, economy, workplace, political life, civil society, and so on. Democracy is based on certain values and institutions. The values of freedom of the individual, human equality, consent of the people are central to the functioning of democracy. The basic institutional arrangements for the functioning of democracy are free, fair and timely elections on the basis of universal adult suffrage, accountability of the elected representatives to the people, separation of powers, democratic party system, decentralization of powers, and independent media, rule of law etc. Political equality is the basis of democracy, which implies that there should be distribution of political power among the people to the maximum possible extent. Here people ideally mean all people. But in reality power is not accessible to all in the history of democracies so far. But a society becomes really democratic when the members of the society are economically equal. Political democracy is meaningless without economic democracy. Economic democracy means freedom from hunger, freedom from unemployment, and freedom from unkind employer. It presupposes an order of society in which nobody is allowed to enjoy superfluity before sufficiency for all is ensured. Thus, democracy extends and touches various aspects of human life: social, economical, and political. It is not only a form of government but, as Maxey calls it, a way of life. The great end and purpose of democracy is the advancement of man and fulfillment of his hopes and aspirations for a good life. According to political scientist Larry Diamond, democracy consists of four key elements. A political system for choosing and replacing the government through free and fair elections. B. The active participation of the people, as citizens, in politics and civic life. C. Protection of the human rights of all citizens. And D. A rule of law in which the laws and procedures apply equally to all citizens. Features. Broadly, democracy means a kind of government in which people rule themselves directly or indirectly through their representations. It is based on the principle of equal opportunity instead of privileges. It aims at narrowing social inequalities through welfare and distribution. It means a system of rule by the common people in which the poor as well as the rich have equal opportunities. It implies a process of decision making on the basis of the principle of majority. It also ensures the protection of the rights of the minorities through different mechanisms. It allows competitive but peaceful struggle for mobilizing and getting votes of the people. It is a kind of government that declares to serve the interests of the people. Consent of the people is the basis of the democratic government. However, the idea of democracy is not neutral. The history of democracy is complex and there are conflicting conceptions around democracy. But the fundamental principle of all kinds of democracies is that it links the government to the people. The debates around democracy are on the questions of its formal institutions, the extent of participation of the people in the democratic process, the functioning of democracy in a situation of socio-economic inequality, etc. Types of democracy. Democracy is so far considered the best form of government. In its long history, democracy has two forms: direct and indirect or representative. So, as a form of government, it is of two types: 1. Direct or pure democracy, 2. Indirect or representative democracy. Direct democracy. Under this system, all the people directly participate in the affairs of administration. All the people assemble together at one place to frame laws, decide policies, and execute them. In the past, this form of democracy existed in the city-states of ancient Greece. It was possible there because city-states were of small territory and limited population. Direct democracy was practiced in Athens in Greece through a form of government brought about as a result of mass meetings. Direct democracy involves direct, continuous participation of the citizens in the process of governance. It is a kind of popular self-government. Active political participation of the citizens is at the core of the direct democracies. And the objective of this participation is common good. According to Aristotle, the principle that all command each and each in turn all is a major feature of direct democracy. People make decisions themselves through discussions, deliberations on the basis of consensus. As the modern states lack these two ingredients, direct democracy is not practicable. Excepting Switzerland, nowhere it is found. The devices of direct democracy in modern states are referendum, initiative, and recall. The basic principle of direct democracy may be considered as following. You people are sovereign. Your sovereignty cannot be represented as it is inalienable. You people should make decisions directly through referendum. Your decisions are to be taken through majority rule. The devices of direct democracy are referendum, initiative, and recall. Referendum. Referendum is the most common method used in direct democracy. Referendum means refer to the people. A bill after being passed by the legislature is referred to the people for their opinion or approval. After being approved by the people, it becomes the law of the country. Thus, this device is a strong weapon in the hands of people to defend themselves against undemocratic or arbitrary rule. Referendum is a vote in which the voters can express a view on a particular issue of public policy. A bill is referred to the people for their approval or opinion. It is quite different from elections in that the elections are means of electing representatives for public offices and does not provide a direct method of influencing public policy. Referendum as a device of direct democracy is not a substitute of representative institutions. This is to supplement them. Initiative. Referendum is a negative power, whereas initiative is a positive device in the hands of the people. Through this, they can initiate a desired law which is not enacted by the legislature. The legislature accepts the proposal coming from the people and it ultimately becomes the law. Recall. It is the process by which the elected representatives of the people are called back from office. If people see that a particular representative is irresponsible and not responsive to them, then they hold the power to call him back by the required strength of their majority. Indirect democracy or representative democracy. Indirect democracy is otherwise known as representative democracy. In modern times, it is not possible to have direct democracy, as the size and population of states are very large. Conditions in modern times have been responsible for the introduction of indirect or representative democracy. A representative democracy is that form of government in which the legally sovereign people elect some representatives who act on their behalf. In this kind of democracy, electorate chooses their representatives through elections held regularly. These representatives represent and articulate the hopes and aspirations of the people who have voted them. Indirect democracy is indirect because the people don't exercise power by themselves but elect those who are to govern on their behalf. This kind of democracy is practicable and convenient because direct form of democracy is not possible in countries with large populations. But through the act of voting, people express their consent, and this is the democratic substance of indirect democracy. Elections are the legitimate source of authority in democracy. Universal adult suffrage is the basis, and elections must be regular, transparent, and competitive. The essence of representative democracy lies in political pluralism and free and open competitions between different political ideas, parties, and movements, etc. Representative democracy is considered in different ways by different people. To some, it is a superior system to other forms of political organization. It protects human rights. Others think that democracy is based on the knowledge and expertise of the total population. So its decisions are rational. Some others believe that representative democracy gives maximum opportunities to the people to develop their capabilities and talents. Characteristics of democracy. Popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is the basic characteristic of democracy. Here the people are real masters and their representatives in the government are to serve people's interests and to promote their welfare. A democratic government is not something which is separate from the people. It exists for their sake and meets their needs. The concept of popular sovereignty is central to representative democracy. It means that the ultimate source of all public authority is the people, and the government cannot do anything contrary to the people's will. Popular sovereignty is based on the following principle: government policies and decisions are reflections of the people's wishes, people participate in the political process, debate takes place and information for the debate is available, and policies are decided on the basis of majority. Rule of law. Another characteristic of democracy is that it is based on the principle of rule of law. The government functions strictly according to the principle of a constitution, whether written or unwritten, which has been accepted by the people. Liberty and equality. Democracy is also built on the foundations of liberty and equality. In a democracy, all individuals are allowed the right to speak, criticize, and disagree with others. The laws or rules of government, which restrict freedom, should be self-imposed, that is, they should be in accordance with the will or consent of the people. The principle of equality also goes hand in hand with liberty under a democratic government. A democratic government gives adequate opportunities to all, and makes everyone feel that his existence is recognized. Political equality means each person carries equal weight in the conduct of public affairs, irrespective of caste, color, creed, sex, or religion. But widespread economic inequality can affect political equality. In the words of Robert Dahl, if citizens are unequal in economic resources, they are likely to be unequal in political resources, and political equality will be impossible to achieve. Political liberty is the basis of a democratic system. It ensures that citizens are protected from government interferences in the exercise of basic freedoms like freedom of speech, of association, of movement, or of conscience. Liberty is the precondition of democracy, and both are inseparable from each other. Democracy does not mean only right to vote, right to contest, or right to hold office, but also the rights to expression, to protest, to join any political party or movement. However, it has been observed in practice of democracy that liberty can be threatened in conditions of inequality and exploitations. Tyranny of the majority can threaten the freedoms and rights of the minority. Majority rule. Democracy is a system of government based upon the principle of majority rule. In all modern democratic states, political parties have come to stay, and have become indispensable. It is the party or parties with a majority of seats in the legislature run the government. But democracy stands for a rule of the majority with adequate safeguards to the minorities. It allows plurality of ideas and of ideologies, and stands firmly on the principle of tolerance. Government by consent or by public criticism. Democracy is regarded as government by consent or by public criticism. People can criticize the government through various agencies of public opinion. No democratic government can continue to exist by continuously defying public opinion. Democracy provides for a change in government according to constitutional principles. It is against any change by violent or revolutionary means. Apart from these, the other things that are required for a functioning democracy are free and fair elections, open and accountable government, civil and political rights, political parties, etc. Strength of democracy. Democracy has a number of strong points in its favor which are summarized below under different heads. Principle of equality. The strength of democracy lies in the fact that it treats every individual and class as equal. It gives every citizen the right to rule and be ruled. It makes no distinction between man and man. In a democracy, no one can complain that he has no chance to be heard. All are treated equal in the eyes of law. Upholds the principle of liberty. Democracy also upholds the principles of liberty. The individual cannot be compelled to do anything against his will. Even the people can freely criticize the government, if it does not serve their interests. Individual freedom is guaranteed under democracy. It also encourages a feeling of brotherhood among the entire body of citizens. A government by consent. Democracy is the only form of government which rests on the consent of the governed. It is the will of the people that reigns supreme. The people can change the government whenever they find the government is neglecting their interest. Popular elections, popular control and popular responsibility are more likely to ensure a greater degree of efficiency than any other system of government. Democratic government is superior to all other types, because in it responsibility to the governed can be effectively enforced. Development of human personality. Democracy recognizes the worth of every individual and the infinite possibilities of development of individuality and human personality. Every individual, however insignificant he may be, is regarded as important. He is guaranteed certain minimum rights which are quite essential for the development of personality. Educative value. Democracy is a large-scale experiment in public education. As everyone has a share in the government of the country and as the interest of all is promoted by the government, the feeling of patriotism pervades all sections of the population. Thus, the greatest strength of democracy is that it elevates the character of the citizens. It arouses the spirit of self-help, self-reliance, self-respect and cooperation and a sense of responsibility among the people. Training ground for citizenship. Democracy serves as a training ground for citizenship. It is a government by discussion and serves to awaken the popular mind. It teaches people the art of living together and regards for the opinion and interest of others. It makes the individual to rise above self-interest and to become an enlightened citizen. Welfare of all. Above all, democracy aims at the benefit and welfare of the whole people and not of any one section, however large or important. There can be no room for exploitation of any kind in democracy. Weakness of democracy. Democracy is also not free from its weak points and it has accordingly been attacked from different quarters. Some of its critics have used very strong language and have called it government by fools, the cult of incompetence, the tyranny of the majority, the enemy of liberty and progress, etc. We may not share these extreme views of the critics, but we must not be blind to the obvious defects that democracy possesses. Importance to quantity. One major defect of democracy is that it attaches more importance to quantity rather than to quality. Government can be carried on only by those persons who have a special knowledge and training. But in democracy, proper consideration to worth is not given. Everyone is thought to be equal to another. The result is that it tends to degenerate into mob rule. Despotism of majority. Democracy further implies majority rule. What is the guarantee that the majority will always be right? But in a democracy, everything is determined by the will of the majority. Thus, there is despotism of the majority over minority. Such a rule can neither ensure better government nor greater liberty. Incompetence. Democracy also breeds incompetence. Worthy and competent men never desire to enter into the game of party politics. As a result, inefficient and incompetent members may be elected to the legislatures. Voters may not be able to judge the merit of a candidate if they happen to be ignorant and illiterate. Even if a voter should exercise his franchise fairly, his choice is often restricted among 2 or 3 inefficient and undesirable candidates. Expensive. Democracy is a very expensive form of government. The holding of elections, organization of machinery for doing party propaganda etc. involve considerable expenditure. Elections are held repeatedly which involve a huge expenditure. People or parties spending money in elections may try to compensate for their loss at a later time. Corruption. Democracy, in practice, tended to support corruption, bribery, etc. The representatives of the people very often act in their own interests rather than in the interest of the community as a whole. It is a known fact that democracies are known for their red tapeism, which encourages corruption. Another factor promoting corrupt practices is the party system, which has become inevitable. Political parties pay great attention to the collection of funds for party purposes. Only rich and clever people derive advantage in a democracy. Does not promote liberty. The critics of democracy further point out that democracy does not really promote the cause of individual liberty. According to these writers, democracy means the rule of ignorance and the ignorant people cannot take care of liberty. To place the chief power, says Lecky, in the most ignorant classes is to place it in the hands of those who naturally care least for political liberty and who are most likely to follow with an absolute devotion some strong leader. Slowness. Democracy is also criticized for slowness. As it is a government by discussion and deliberation, consultation and criticism, quick and prompt decision cannot be taken in times of war and other emergencies. Unstable. In democracy, the government may break with the change of loyalty of the members from one party to the other. Therefore, this government is quite unfit to secure stability and continuity in government office. Frequent change of government creates political instability. Visionary ideal. Some critics contend that democracy is in fact a visionary ideal impossible of realization. These writers say that all so-called democracies have been and are in reality oligarchies of one sort or another. Political power is always actually exercised by some small ruling group or class. Thus, democracy has both its strength and weaknesses, virtues and defects. It may lead to the worst type of despotism. But given favorable conditions, it is the best form of government. Historical evidence does not prove any other system of government superior to democracy. As C.D. Burns observes correctly, no one denies that existing representative assemblies are defective, but even if an automobile does not work well, it is foolish to go back into a farm cart, however romantic. Above all, like all systems, democracy has been hailed as well as criticized, but it has never been rejected. Conditions necessary for successful working of democracy. The following are some of the conditions which are necessary for the successful working of democracy. Longing for self-government. Democracy is a government of the people. So it is the people who first of all must be willing to accept democracy as a form of government and a way of life. They should have a longing for self-government and should not tolerate living under any other form of government. They must have firm faith in the principle that good government is no substitute for self-government, and they must be prepared to retain self-government at any cost. If a strong desire for democracy can be taken for granted, success becomes easy. Eternal vigilance. Democracy needs eternal vigilance. It is said, eternal vigilance is the true price of liberty. The people must always be alert and active and must watch carefully every movement of the government. If they are indifferent, power is likely to slip into the hands of a small body of men, thus giving rise to oligarchies or dictatorship. Universal education. Democracy can be successful only where the people are educated and well informed. As democracy is people's government, people should be educated and should be fully aware of their rights and obligations. J.S. Mill has rightly said that universal education should precede universal enfranchisement. Before the people are given the right to vote, they must be imparted education, otherwise, they cannot understand the value of their vote. Economic condition. Prof. Lasky has emphatically asserted that political democracy without its economic counterpart is meaningless. It is essential for the successful working of democracy that the masses should be free to some extent from the cares of the basic requirements of life, so that they can take interest in public affairs. A hungry man knows no democracy. Moreover, a hungry man is a danger to society and is liable to be more easily influenced for anti-social activities. Democracy presupposes that every individual will have the minimum means of subsistence. Free and fearless press, for educating the people and keeping them always well informed, it is necessary to have a free and fearless press. A free press exposes the arbitrary actions of the government and also enables the government to understand public opinion. It acts as a channel of communication between the government and the governed. A great democracy has always a great press. It encourages independent and critical thinking about public questions. Spirit of tolerance. A spirit of tolerance and cooperation among the people is also essential for the success of democracy. Mutual tolerance as the basis of democracy. The minority should tolerate the rule of the majority and the majority should tolerate the healthy criticism of the minority. People should try to resolve their differences through honorable compromises. Democracy can only work in an atmosphere of peace. General agreement among the citizens on fundamental issues and a spirit of give and take can surely lead democracy to success. The people therefore must learn to rise above all considerations of caste, class and creed in public affairs. Good leadership. Democracy for its success sometimes needs a good leader. All the people of the state actually do not directly participate in public affairs. It is the leader who leads and others follow. The leader, then, must have sufficient strength and ability to lead, and he should be honest and incorruptible. A good leader unites the people and a bad leader divides them. Good constitution. Another essential condition for the safe working of democracy is a good constitution securing the rights and liberties of the people and restricting the power of the government. With a wise constitution, the turbulence of democracy may be restrained and made as calm as water in a reservoir. Sir Henry Mene. Thus, democratic government requires for its success certain conditions, in the absence of which, it is destined to perish. However, it is essential that the people should constantly learn and relearn the lesson that it is not possible to work democracy successfully without developing a high sense of public spirit and integrity. Challenges to democratic process in India. India became a secular democratic republic in 1950 with the birth of its constitution. Despite several difficulties and limitations, India has consolidated itself as a democracy over these post-independent years. It is no less than other old matured democracies in the world. Democracy has survived in India and has been institutionalized. Despite the absence of many factors often associated with democracy, Indian democracy has traveled a long road, making it the largest democracy in the world and a vibrant one which is unparalleled in post-colonial times. Building democracy and deepening it was the biggest challenge in a multi-religious and multilingual diverse society like that of India with widespread socio-economic inequalities. The constitution that emerged out of the national liberation struggle and its values prioritized equality and justice as the basis of governance. This laid the foundation of democracy along with other principles like an elaborate arrangement of fundamental rights, secularism, federalism, separation of powers and so on. The politically inclusive character of Indian democracy is considered to be the major reason behind its success and strength. The democratic process in the country has been able to draw the excluded groups into it who were otherwise historically disadvantaged. A large number of voters participate in the elections, and elections are opportunities for them to influence political parties, governments, and their policies. By this, the socio-economic composition of the representatives and of political leadership has changed. Representatives have come from marginalized sections, though there is still the dominance of upper caste and class in the political system and in the democratic process. There has been a significant change in the composition of legislatures, making them more socially representative. This has signaled a shift in the balance of power in the society. However, this has not been matched by economic equality. Inequality. Observers of Indian democracy have wondered how democracy in India has survived in an environment of widespread and persistent inequalities. While the achievements in the field of representative democracy in India are strong, it is not so in bridging the gap in economic inequalities. Economic growth and development in the country has not been inclusive and egalitarian. High GDP growth has benefited a small group of rich, and the gap between the rich and poor have increased disproportionately over the years. A vast majority of people still suffer from poverty and distress and don't have access to basic amenities like food, health, education, housing, etc. Due to unequal distribution of assets, resources, and benefits, the big business, corporate capital, and rich people have dominated the democratic system and process, which includes policy making. There was a contradiction between economic inequality and social inclusion in Indian democratic process. This was tried to be resolved with the politics of accommodation. But this attempt is more rhetorical than substantial, for which Indian democratic system has not progressed significantly so far in reducing the economic inequalities. Widespread economic inequalities contradict an inclusive democratic system. In such a situation, economically powerful will have an influence in both democracy and democratic process, reducing it to mere formality without any substance. Illiteracy. Literacy rate refers to the percentage of people who are able to read and write vs. those who are not. Literacy is the condition or quality of being literate, especially the ability to read and write. That literacy is the basic requirement of economic development has been recognized throughout the world, and hence literacy has reached around 99% in countries of Japan, South Korea, USA, UK, Germany, France, etc. But in India, the literacy is still hovering around 74% on an average, reaching above 90% in Kerala and below 75% in Bihar, Arunachal Pradesh, Jharkhand, etc. All efforts and success in literacy have become obliterated by huge rise in population. One is heavier than many. Women population constitutes a larger portion of total illiterate population. In India, the female literacy rate is around 65% as against the male literacy rate of around 82%. Hence, women education is very important to eradicate illiteracy. Illiteracy refers to the state of being unable to read or write. Illiteracy is a great hurdle for the economic development in India. It entangles a man or a nation and eats into the vital of life. Illiteracy is a scar in our national life. Millions of people in our country are still in the darkness of illiteracy and ignorance. They are deceived in every walk of life. Lack of literacy is a hurdle for overall development and well-being of this country. It weakens the backbone of our country. It is not only baffling our democracy slowly but steadily, also leading the vast democratic setup of this country to jeopardy. Illiteracy is maximum amongst scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and other backward classes who are not only poor, but unaware, unconcerned, and unwilling to improve and change their lot. Illiteracy deprives people not only of economic development but also of all benefits of education, reading, writing, etc. Remaining within the darkness of ignorance, poverty, and impoverishes. It is essential that the government of India rises up to the occasion and take all possible steps to set up thousands of primary schools all around the country, making literacy a compulsory obligation of every citizen, without which he will be penalized. For this, the primary education has to be made free of tuition fees, all books and papers and instruments including computer to be supplied free. We demand Android phones, tablets and laptops. No blackboard, as there is no school building. Unless all citizens are literate or educated, they cannot ever read newspaper, circulars, notices, advertisements, posters, and letters from near and dear ones. This will compel the illiterate masses to be deprived of 90% benefit of development, entertainment, sports and games, medical prescription, operate cell phone, TV and computer. Students are the builders of a nation. They can do a lot to eradicate illiteracy. They can spend their spare time and holidays in helping illiterate people to become literate, teaching them the habits of hygiene and sanitation. A blind person cannot witness the captivating beauty of nature. Similarly, an illiterate person remains blindfolded to the charms of the world of learning and knowledge. If and when illiteracy will be removed completely, India will be a new country where 100% people can participate in all programs of economic development. Solutions. Illiteracy is a burning question today in India. It should be eradicated root and branch to make our life happy and prosperous. To eradicate this problem and to bring about her social, economical and political improvements, all educated persons and students should join hands together in all possible ways. The UNO has been trying its best to remove this problem of illiteracy from the underdeveloped countries like India. The year 1990 has been regarded as the International Literacy Year. Postal stamps and calendars have been released for this purpose by the central government, but these are not sufficient steps for promotion of literacy in a large country like India. More schools can be set up all over the country. There should be ample provisions in the central and state budgets to fight illiteracy. Government should try to bring every child to school. Effective measures should be taken to stop child labor. It is this illiteracy that seizes this land of our like an octopus and throttles her to death. Philanthropic organizations and both formal and non-formal educational institutions should help these poor people to read and write. They can play a vital role to make the illiterate literate. Conclusion. Government alone cannot cope with such an uphill task of eradicating illiteracy. People themselves should come forward to perform this national duty so that the literacy drive may come to the top in a mass movement. India is sure to be left far behind in comparison with other countries in point of socio-economic improvement unless and until the intelligentsia of the country think deeply over this cancerous disease of illiteracy. Regionalism. Regionalism in Indian politics is fast spreading across various states of India. It has become a striking feature of the Indian political party system. The rise of regional political parties have played significant role in the regional, state and even national politics of our democratic country. After the first general election of 1952, the Election Commission had declared 19 political parties as regional parties. In fact, the regional political parties have become a part and parcel of Indian political system. A regional political party usually confines its activities within the boundary of a state or region. It often represents the interest of a particular regional group, language group, ethnic group or cultural group. While forming their policies, these regional political parties have often shown ideological integrity. They are generally not interested in taking parts in national politics. Rather, sometimes they show militant attitude towards the national politics or to the central government. While showing this militant attitude, they often get themselves engaged in unscrupulous political activities. Yet while they themselves come into power in their respective regions or states, they perform political activities with tremendous responsibility. The most noteworthy examples of these regional political parties are DMK and ADMK of Tamil Nadu, the Telugu Desam Party of Andhra Pradesh, the National Conference Party of Jammu and Kashmir, the Akali Dal Party of Punjab, the Trinamool Congress of West Bengal, the CPIM of West Bengal, the Assam Gana Parishad of Assam, the Gorkha League of Darjeeling in West Bengal etc. Reasons behind the birth of regionalism in Indian democracy. There are various reasons for its emergence of regionalism in Indian politics such as: firstly, the administrative policies and decisions as well as the developmental plans taken at the national level may not satisfy all people of the country, and these people, who remain dissatisfied, may feel that their interests are not properly safeguarded. In such a context, they form the regional parties to solve their own problems. That was how the regional parties like DMK, ADMK, the National Conference of Jammu and Kashmir etc. were formed. Secondly, India is still not free from ethnic, racial and religious orthodoxy. Sometimes the regionalism in Indian politics emerge on these ethnic, racial or religious grounds. That was how the Hindu Mahasabha, Ram Rajya Parishad, Shiromani Akali Dal, the Muslim League or even the Telugu Desam Party was formed. Thirdly, sometimes the regionalism in Indian politics are formed on language issues as well. The DMK, ADMK parties of Tamil Nadu, the Telangana Praja Samiti of Andhra Pradesh or the Gorkha League of West Bengal etc. was formed on the basis of this language issue. These parties focuses on the interest of people who speak common language. Fourthly, sometimes the regional political parties are formed on the initiative of one or a few political leaders. However, these types of regional parties usually do not last long. Since most of such political parties are dependent on one leader, they generally extinguish when the leader himself dies. Fifthly, sometimes the regionalism in politics helps to safeguard the minority interests. The Muslim League, the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, the TYC etc. belong to this category of the regional political parties. Sixthly, sometimes the internal conflicts of the big national parties may pave the ground for the rise of the regional political parties. That was how the Congress Party was divided into several small parties like Congress for Democracy, Congress, JETC. Seventhly, sometimes a leader of a big national party, if ousted from his other original party, forms a regional party to express his or her grievances. That was how Sri Ajoy Mukherjee formed the Bangla Congress or SMT. Mamta Banerjee formed the Trinamool Congress in Bengal. Eighthly, the regional political parties formulate their policies and programs on the basis of the regional demands, grievances, and interests of the people. Naturally, they pin with them the confidence and loyalty of the people. The national parties to try to utilize this confidence and loyalty of the people for their own sinister interest. Thus, they form coalitions and fronts, and the leftist and right political parties appear as strange bedfellows. This has made the regional parties gain a lot of importance and confidence. Ninthly, during the pre-independence days, people fought for the country's freedom, and a unique sense of oneness, a sense of nationalism had flared up in them, which had strengthened the solidarity and integrity of the nation. But after independence, that burning sense of nationalism has evaporated and a narrow sense to regional interest has developed. This has also paved the grounds for the emergence of regional political parties. Lastly, the general decadence of values, too much centralization of power, dictatorial role of the leaders, negligence to the regional leadership etc. in the national parties have not only weakened their status but also facilitated the rise of numbers of regional political parties, both big and small, in India. The problem of regionalism has been discussed in greater detail in Chapter 5. Students should read both the chapters relating to regionalism to have a better grasp of the subjects. Naxalite problem, beginning of Naxalism in India. The exploitation of poor people, depressed classes, and tribal people by superior classes has been the situation in India from the earlier periods till now. When this exploitation reaches a saturation level, a revolution will automatically rise from the victims, and sometimes it takes a form of a movement questioning the entire system itself. A good example for this is the Naxal movement in India. The Naxal movement derived its name from a village in West Bengal called Naxabari, shortly called as Naxalism, as a radical communist movement where the social masses strongly believe that the solution for the social wrongs happening is to overthrow the existing political system completely. The Naxalite movement in India initially began in West Bengal, in a village called Naxabari, and later spread to the rural areas of Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Orissa, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh. History of Naxalism. The movement of Naxalism in India has its seeds in the Russian Revolution, which was based on Marxism and socialism, that is, all the resources of the state should be equally distributed among all the sections of people. This concept was inherited by Mao Zedong of Communist Party of China, including revolutionary and radical dimensions to it. This was popularly known as Maoism. The Communist Party of India, CPI, taking inspiration from Maoism, followed the method of armed rebellion, Maoists, to counter the British forces during the freedom struggle, with West Bengal as the center, and later on spread to other states as well. Tebhaga movement was the first Maoist movement started in West Bengal in 1946, during which the poor peasants turned against their landlords, who were acquiring a maximum share in the harvest and oppressing the peasants. This movement turned violent as the farmers started an armed fight against the landlords. Telangana movement, which was led by the people of Telangana in the period of 1946-51 against the atrocities of the Nizam rule, also acquired radical dimensions as it progressed. The pre-independence Maoist movements are mostly inspired by the Indian freedom struggle, whereas after independence the poor socio-economic conditions and the exploitation of the resources available to the locals, such as destruction of forests in tribal areas, are the main causes of the Naxal movements. Naxabari movement in 1967 was the landmark movement in the history of Naxalism. On the 3rd of March 1967, in a village called Naxabari in West Bengal, police opened fire on the farmers who were protesting against the agricultural laws, and many farmers were died. Then the uprising started against the government, which was led by Charu Mazumdar of CPI. The armed rebellions killed many police officials and the movement got national attention. Many uprisings started with the inspiration of the Naxalite movement in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Telangana, tribal areas of Srikakulam in Andhra Pradesh and Mahendragiri forest region in Orissa. The most subdued and socially marginalized people and tribal people mostly participated in these uprisings against the government, and these areas are still the Naxal affected ones. There are many reasons for the rise and growth of Naxalbari movement. Mismanagement of forests as the main reason for the spread of Naxalism from just one village in WB to 7,000 villages in the last 38 years. Different Naxal groups now control 19% of India's forest over an area 2.5 times the size of Bangladesh. Growing inter and intra-regional disparities. The Naxals lure people with vulnerable livelihood: fishermen, bamboo cutters, farmers and daily laborers. By doing this, the Naxals have created large social base. Tribal alienation, displacement by large projects and the governments. Failure to ensure food security is the main reason in Orissa. Over the past decade, successive governments have failed to address the problem of poverty and unemployment endemic to the region. Actions taken by the government. Anti-Naxal forces. The government, in retaliation to the Naxal movements, created Salvajudam military campaign, Operation Green Hunt in Naxal-affected areas. As of now, the CRPF, Central Reserve Police Force, are in charge to these anti-Naxal operations. Awareness campaigns in Naxal-affected areas. Mostly these movements gather the support of the people due to their ignorance and backwardness. Hence, government started organizing awareness camps and giving employment to the people, setting up Anganwadi centers for their healthcare and so on. Conclusion. However, this is an ongoing problem in our country and more steps are to be taken in a more organized manner to reduce the grievances. Gender inequality. Gender inequality is that women and men are not equal. It refers to unequal treatment or perceptions of individuals based on their gender. It arises from differences in socially constructed gender roles. Gender inequality in India refers to health, education, economic and political inequalities between men and women in India. Various international gender inequality indices rank India differently on each of these factors, as well as on a composite basis, and these indices are controversial. Definition and concept of gender inequality. Gender is a socio-cultural term referring socially defined roles and behaviors assigned to males and females in a given society, whereas the term sex is a biological and physiological phenomenon which defines man and woman. In its social, historical and cultural aspects, gender is a function of power relationship between men and women where men are considered superior to women. Therefore, gender may be understood as a man-made concept, while sex is natural or biological characteristics of human beings. Gender inequality, in simple words, may be defined as discrimination against women based on their sex. Women are traditionally considered by the society as weaker sex. She has been accorded a subordinate position to men. She is exploited, degraded, violated and discriminated both in our homes and in outside world. This peculiar type of discrimination against women is prevalent everywhere in the world and more so in Indian society. Causes and types of gender inequality in India. The root cause of gender inequality in Indian society lies in its patriarchy system. According to the famous sociologist Sylvia Walby, patriarchy is a system of social structure and practices in which men dominate, oppress and exploit women. Women's exploitation is an age-old cultural phenomenon of Indian society. The system of patriarchy finds its validity and sanction in our religious beliefs, whether it is Hindu, Muslim or any other religion. Barring few exceptions here and there, women have no power to take independent decisions either inside their homes or in outside world. Among Muslims the situation is same and there too sanction for discrimination or subordination is provided by religious texts and Islamic traditions. Similarly, in other religious beliefs also women are being discriminated against in one way or other. Boys are more important than girls. The unfortunate part of gender inequality in our society is that the women too, through continued socio-cultural conditioning, have accepted their subordinate position to men. And they are also part and parcel of same patriarchal system. Extreme poverty and lack of education are also some of the reasons for women's low status in society. Poverty and lack of education drives countless women to work in low-paying domestic service, organized prostitution, or as migrant laborers. Women are not only getting unequal pay for equal or more work, but also they are being offered only low-skill jobs for which lower wages are paid. This has become a major form of inequality on the basis of gender. Educating girl child is still seen as a bad investment because she is bound to get married and leave her paternal home one day. Thus, without having good education, women are found lacking in present days demanding job skills, whereas each year's high school and 10+2 standard results show that girls are always doing better than boys. This shows that parents are not spending much after 10+2 standard on girl child, and that's why they lack in job market. Not only in education, in case of family food habits, it is the male child who gets all the nutritious and choicest foods, while the girl child gets whatever is left behind after the male members have taken their meals, or the food which is low in both quality and nutrition. And this becomes a major health issue in her later years. One of the main reasons for the high incidences of difficult births and anemia in women is the poor quality of food which a girl always gets either in her paternal home or in her in-laws, as also is the excessive workload that they are made to bear from their early childhood. So the inequality or discrimination against women is at various levels in the society, either in home or outside home. Gender inequality in India, important data. Global indices. Gender inequality is also reflected in India's poor ranking in various global gender indices. UNDP's Gender Inequality Index 2014, India's ranking is 127 out of 152 countries in the list. This ranking is only above Afghanistan as far as SAARC countries are concerned. World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index 2014, India's ranks at 114 in the list of 142 countries of the world. This index examines gender gap in 4 major areas: A. Economic participation and opportunity. A. Educational achievements. A. Health and life expectancy. A. Political empowerment. India's position on these indicators was as follows: A. Economic participation and opportunity, 134th. A. Educational achievements, 126th. A. Health and life expectancy, 141st. A. Political empowerment, 15th. These important global indices show the sorry state of affairs in India as far as gender equality is concerned. Only in case of political empowerment, India is doing fine, which is a welcome sign. But other indices are very poor and a lot need to be done to improve the same. Getting to parity. For India to maintain its position as a global growth leader, more concerted efforts at local and national levels, and by the private sector, are needed to bring women to parity with men. While increasing representation of women in the public spheres is important and can potentially be attained through some form of affirmative action, an attitudinal shift is essential for women to be considered as equal within their homes and in broader society. Educating Indian children from an early age about the importance of gender equality could be a meaningful start in that direction. Points to remember. Democracy is derived from 2 Greek words, demos, meaning the people, and krasha, meaning power. It is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But it is not only a form of government, but a way of life, as it touches various aspects of life: social, economic, and political. Democracy can be direct, if people directly participate in the affairs of government. But in modern time, due to vast size and population of the state, direct democracy has been substituted by indirect or representative democracy. Direct democracy is only found in Switzerland in form of referendum, initiative, and recall. Characteristics. Democracy is based on the principle of popular sovereignty, rule of law, liberty, and equality. It also means the rule of majority with adequate safeguards to minority. It is a government by consent or public criticism. It provides for change in the government through constitutional means. Strength of democracy. A. It treats every individual as equal. B. Upholds the principle of liberty. C. It is a government by consent. D. There is scope for development of human personality. A. It has high educative value. F. It serves as a training ground for citizenship. G. It aims at welfare of all. Weakness of democracy. A. It attaches more importance to quantity. B. There is possibility of despotism of majority. C. It breeds incompetence. D. It is expensive. A. Scope for corruption. F. It is also criticized for its slowness and creating instability in the government. Conditions for successful working of democracy. A. The people must have firm faith in democratic ideals. B. Eternal vigilance is required. C. Universal education should be given priority. D. Basic requirement of life should be guaranteed. A. Free and fearless press is an essential condition. F. Spirit of tolerance and cooperation among the people. G. Good leadership and good constitution are other requirements. Challenges to democratic process in India: inequality, illiteracy, regionalism, Naxalite problem, gender inequality. Glossary. Gender: the state of being male or female, typically used with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. Rule of law: the principle whereby all members of a society, including those in government, are considered equally subject to publicly disclosed legal codes and processes. Referendum: a general vote by the electorate on a single political question which has been referred to them for a direct decision by the legislature. Initiative is a means by which a petition signed by a certain minimum number of registered voters can force a public vote. In the citizens' initiative process, citizens draft a legislative bill or constitutional amendment, a measure, which they then propose by petition. If the petition receives sufficient popular support, the measure is then placed on the ballot and can be enacted into law by a direct vote of citizens. Recall: a recall election, also called a recall referendum or representative recall, is a procedure by which voters can remove an elected official from office through a direct vote before their term has ended. Blank. Model questions. Section A. Multiple choice questions. 1. The basis of democracy is A. Elected government, B. Nominated government, C. Rule by army, D. Popular games and sports. 2. Who said democracy is a government in which everyone has a share? A. Lincoln, B. Dicey, C. Seeley, D. Bryce. 3. Indirect democracy is known as A. Government of the rich, B. Government of the wise, C. Elected government, D. Non-direct democracy. 4. Which is not a device of direct democracy? A. Referendum, B. Initiative, C. Recall, D. Representation. 5. Electorate means A. Direct democracy, B. All the eligible voters, C. All the people, D. Candidates during election. 6. In universal adult franchise, A. All adult men have the right to vote. B. All the people have the right to vote. C. All adults have the right to vote. D. All adult women have the right to vote. 7. In which country is direct democracy is in practice? A. India, B. USA, C. Great Britain, D. Switzerland. 8. In which country has democracy originated? A. China, B. India, C. Greece, D. Great Britain. Section B. Write briefly. 1. What is democracy? 2. What is direct democracy? 3. What is indirect democracy? 4. What is referendum? 5. Define recall. 6. What is meant by majority rule? 7. Democracy is a way of life. Comment. 8. What is popular sovereignty? 9. What is representation? 10. What is inequality? 11. What are the solutions to the problems of illiteracy in India? 12. Define regionalism. 13. What are the negative effects of regionalism in India? 14. What is Naxalism? 15. Solution to Naxalite problem. 16. Causes of gender inequality. Section C. Long essay type. 1. What is democracy? What are its types? 2. Discuss the challenges to the democratic process in India. 3. What is Naxalism? How it has affected the democratic process in India. 4. Define democracy and state its meaning. 5. Democracy is a way of life. Explain. 6. Discuss main features of democracy. 7. Analyze the conditions for success of democracy. 8. Discuss the causes and types of gender inequality in India.